3 weeks ago, my friend, my chavrusa, my role model, Reb Pesach Diskin, Shlita, and I had an important, yet very sensitive issue that needed to be discussed, needed to be decided on, and it needed a chacham. All signs in town pointed to 401 Yeshiva Lane, and we ended up in Shraga Neuberger's house until 12:30 at night, and it seemed like his night was just starting. He had interruptions from all kinds of shilas and issues, and I was thinking that some stenographer would have a really good time trying to write a sefer about these shilas and shuvas, but it'll be a bestseller in a second. But al kol panim, it seemed like the central address for Chizuk in these areas was Shraga. As such, it's a kavod gadol to have Shraga Neuberger Shlita address the tzibur.
Shus Chashva Rabbanim Yedidi Reb Moshe Tovia our mishpachas go back a long time. My father's Zechon L'Rocha, my chaverim, I think close to 70 years ago. Kol HaKol HaGadosh Hazeh. And when I say the words Kol HaKadosh Hazeh, it's not just because it's Kaddish, which it is, but because I'd like to talk a little bit about Kedusha. 130 years ago, this is something that I heard firsthand from my Baba Allah Shalom. I was in Beis Medrash, she was Nifter. She was the youngest daughter of Shraga Feivel Frank, where Yisrael Salanter and his Talmidim stayed for Elul. My Baba didn't see her Yisrael, but she saw her Bitzel Petterberger. And as the youngest child, 6 years old, according to the Cheshbon, it's about 130 years ago, and I remember her telling it clearly how she was in charge of bringing the food to Rabbi Yisrael's Talmidim. They didn't utter a word from Rosh Hashanah, from Rosh Chodesh through Yom Kippur. And I remember her describing bringing the food for Bitzel Petterberger, and she would say, Egvan Ahecher and Ashena. He was tall, nice looking, and when she brought him the food, she said he took the food, and instead of saying thank you, he bowed down like that, and would not utter the words thank you, because except for Divrei Torah and Divrei Musar, they didn't talk. It sounds extreme. In fact, Rabbi Yerucham, who learned by Rabbi Bitzel, said he was physically able to do it, but he wasn't in the madrega. But the way I understand it is that the extreme that they went to was for the purpose of that after Yom Kippur, they never spoke and had to say, I'm sorry for what they said, because their Shlita and their Keich HaDibur was so important. They didn't hurt other people's feelings because they were so Zahir in Dibur. That's how the Da'ilim spent Elul a long time ago. Every door has its nisyonis. It's not a secret that our door's nisyon is Kedusha. People are familiar with the Shem Shabbos Shul in Borough Park. Everybody goes there from Yonim. Shul got its name because when Shmir Shabbos was in the Soyin, in order to be a member in the shul, you had to be a Shomer Shabbos. It seems to me that we have our nisayon of having Kedusha in our lives, in Dibur, in Maisa, in all areas. Our Kehila, if we could call it such, should be Mavakshe Kedusha. Because whatever the nisayon the Eibusha gives to the Tzibur, then people were poverty-stricken. Shabbos is a nisayon, these are well-known things. And the Yidden that stood for Shmir Shabbos were Meiser Nefesh. Our nisayon is far more pervasive. Not only because it's more than just one day a week, and I'm not taking away from their nisayon, poverty, losing jobs week after week. Unbelievable nisayonus. But our nisayon of Mamlechas Kain of Great Kaddish, of being Heilig, of being Kedoshim, is something which we have each and every day of our lives. Not just Shabbos. We have it in Dibur, we have it in Maisa, we have it in dress, we have it in Shabbos, we have it in so many areas. As Rashiva said, the selfishness of our door, the preachers of our door, and all of the nisyonis that children have today growing up, it's a pachad. Pachad to raise children. It seems that if we could become and realize our own role and be ambassadors of Kedusha, that would make a tremendous difference. In 1929, by the Chevron massacre, there was a bacher named Nachman Lachmi, who was 14 or 15 years old, who survived the massacre, and his best friends were killed. Rabbi Chasman Zechron Bracha went over to him and said, Nachman, why were you saved instead of your friends? Come back in 3 days and tell me. And the bacher was plagued. How could I know? They were such chashuv bachrim. How could I possibly know why I was saved and they weren't? And after a day and a half, he was distraught. And the Blade heard about it and called him in and said, Nu Nachman, do you know? He said, I haven't a clue. He said, good, because it's impossible to know. So why did the Rebbe ask me? He told him, because I wanted you to understand the responsibility of being a survivor. Each and every one of us, Lanias Daiti, whether we're born from Bali Tshuva, whatever the case is, that we're sitting in El, coming for Chizuk. When right binyan of Klal Yisrael is so weiter weg, the sweet Haruvas, and all the things that are going on, we're the survivors. And that's machriach us. We have to live our lives with more Kedusha. How many people here could answer the following question in a second? What is the thermometer in our house at this given moment? Most people know. Chatzkel Levenstein was sitting at a Shever Brachas. And he turned to the Chassan the fourth day of a Shever Brachas and he said to him, so tell me, how is your Shalom Bayis? So the Bacher started laughing. He says, I'm married 4 days. What kind of question is that? So Chatzkel said to him, I'm married over 40 years and I give a din v'cheshbon on my Shalom Bayis every single day. He could tell you the level, the temperature of how much Hashros Hashchina is in his house. Shalom Bayis is more than just having a calm, relaxed, positive makom. Through all the things that the Rosh Yeshiva said and that we can all work on, we create more hashras hashchin in the bayis, more kedusha, and that's a positive koyach for Gans Klal Yisrael. And Avos Reb Nosson, it says, "Kol mi sheish li shalom bebeisa is malav akasav ki'ila yesh shalom b'chol ha'olam kula." Every yid is mekusher mitua for Gans Klal Yisrael. Doch shalom bayis, kedusha. It's not just shalom; it's kedusha. It's just hashras hashchina. We have to look at ourselves as people who are achroi to bring more kedusha to the world, and shalom bayis is an oifen of kedusha. Shabbos kodesh, the kedusha of Shabbos. Do we feel it enough? Do we express it enough? Do we show it to our children enough? I was walking Yerushalayim once, and the Yerushalmi was in front of me, and didn't even know I was behind him. And a car came by, and he whispered to himself. It made such a roshim on me. He whispered to himself, not to yell, not to make a macha, not to make a scene. He just whispered to himself, Shabbos. Not even knowing that even one person would hear it. Myself. He felt Shabbos. A yid's going by, driving, Shabbos. But if we don't show our excitement for Shabbos enough, and if we don't come up with enough alternatives for our children, and they end up in the street playing games and sometimes dressing inappropriately, Kedusha Shabbos, Shabbos, Shabbos. Kihimekar bracha. Another area of Kedusha that we can all be mechazik in and help. And then comes, of course, the most difficult, tznius. Some of my talmidim tell me recently in the workplace that the nisyonis are getting worse and worse. What used to be the shaila of coming to ask Rabbanim about what do you do when someone wants to shake your hand? Today, the workplace is, Achmano Litzlan, people expect a hug. It's a pachad. Such a lack of tznius. And these are the nisyonos we have. We're not mekadosh ourselves enough and realize that we have to have a mindset of kedusha. We have to have a shukah for kedusha, and that we have to imbue ourselves with Torah. When you come into a shul to daven, the way you dress makes an afkamina. We learned macht an afkamina. All these things make an afkamina, so that we have the kayach to warden off all the nisyonos of the lack of tznius that the world has. And I believe that because the nisyonos are so prevalent and so constant and so encompassing in life, that many of us can chas v'sholom say, no, I can't work on my kedusha, especially when it comes to tznius. I can't. It's too hard. So Shiva Zamracha told over a Maisa, and I believe that it has a parallel. He said that when Yisrael was once in a hotel, and there was a Jewish boy there working as a stock clerk, who was Machal Shabbos in the Yisrael, the Velt of Kiruv, trying to talk to this Bacher the importance of Shabbos Kodesh. And he was unsuccessful. So he asked the Bachar to show him his work, and he said to him, I can show you, and he showed him how to write. Instead of 3 pages for the inventory, you can do it in 1 page. So you'd have 2 pages less of Chilul Shabbos. Didn't make him into a Shomer Shabbos. But every malacha less is enough to. Yeshiva said over that when the sewing machine came out, Yisrael held that there were tailors in Kovna, Machali Shabbos, who he couldn't get to become Shomer Shabbos, but he held that using the machine may be less malacha than Tfir b'yadayim, and he talked to them about that. Even when someone wasn't becoming a Shomer Shabbos, yet their malacha vinsiker, each malacha less, is an accomplishment. And I believe the same thing is true in Tznius. If a person is nichshul, says something inappropriate, doesn't use the Kei Chadibra the way the Bali Musar did, does that mean that we're now putter and we shouldn't try harder the next time to do different? Avada we should, and Avada we can. Remember, Mamlechas Kain and V'Goy Kodesh, that's our Aveda. In this week's parsha, the mitzvah of Alachta B'Drachav is every Kinoi the Eibishter is known by. And the Rambam says, just like he's called Kodesh, Mahu Kodesh Avato Kodesh, Medav Zayin Doimet to the Eibishter. We've got to work on our Kedusha and believe that Kedusha is the Avodah for every Yid. It's not for Rabbanim, it's not for Prushim, it's for each and every person in Klal Yisrael. Each person, Lefi Madrigosoi, to try to act with more Kedusha. Ata Kadosh, Shimcha Kadosh, Ukdoishim B'chol Yoyim El V'chosela. Abu Jaham says, many Mefarshim say the Kedoshim are talking about the Malachim. Abu Jaham says it means Klal Yisrael. Mir Zayin the Kedoshim. We are the survivors. We are the ones that can bring Kedusha to Klal Yisrael. The Chlernin, the Chdavenin, the Shmira of our Dibur, through the Kedusha that we put into our bias, the Kedusha we put into a Shabbos Kodesh. We're Kedoshim, and we have it b'kayach to do it. The Eibishter gave us that. And the fact that we're going to have nisyonis, and the fact that times will fail, if we struggle with it, and we're mavakish the Eibishter, who knows how much kayach of Kedusha in this room, how much Kedusha we could add to Klal Yisrael that will give through that the schus, otzum be'ezer Hashem, for Shana, Klal Yisrael will see Dvarim Tovim and the Sakonas to Klal Yisrael and Eretz Yisrael and all the Nisyanis and all the Yiddish kinder that are struggling. The Eibishter is on our helfen that through our bikush of Kedusha, Aydei Zeh, we should be Zeicha to bring the Geula Shlema Erev Yameinu Amen.